I'm Julie. I'm an alcoholic. So yeah, I am an alcoholic. My sobriety date is June 6th of 2018. I'm from Chicago, Illinois. Downtown Chicago, not one of those people who like say they're from Chicago, but are like 25 miles outside the city. They really piss me off. Thank you. I'm very short. Um, I'm under 5 feet, in case anybody was wondering, to be exact. But yes, a lot of people come up here and they say, I'm an alcoholic, but drugs are part of my story, so I'm going to talk about that. And yes, that is true. Drugs are a big part of my story, as is an eating disorder and workaholism and love addiction and really anything under the sun. And so kind of just bear with me because I'm going to talk about it all. I was born in Chicago. My parents met in college. They got divorced when I was 2. My birth announcement, for sports fans out there, you'll appreciate this, it read, he's a Cowboys fan, she's a Steelers fan. Good luck and welcome to the world, Julie. Suffice it to say, the marriage did not last very long. They divorced when I was 2, and I don't know, growing up, it was always just a fact. My parents are divorced. My dad remarried my stepmom when I was 4. My mom met my stepdad when I was 5, and I just grew up having 2 houses, 2 sets of toys, 2 birthdays, 2 Hanukkahs. I'm Jewish, by the way. That's another common theme that will come up very often. I make very inappropriate Jew jokes, so I apologize in advance. It's inappropriate. It was always just a fact. We had this thing in my grade school. It was called Banana Splits. It was the greatest thing. It was for everybody who had divorced parents. We would get together once a week on Friday and talk about our feelings. And at the end of the school year, we would have banana splits because, I don't know, we were special because so sad. Our parents were divorced. And that was just a thing. And I grew up and I went to this really small Jewish day school. There were 35 of us in a grade. We had all been together from the age of 3 to 14. And these were, these still are to this day some of my best friends. And we just kind of grew up in this tiny little bubble, and we were sheltered, and, alcohol and drugs and sex, those weren't things that were on our radar. Like I said, there were 35 kids in our grade. There were 14 girls. Don't ask me how it's possible. I was one of the popular ones out of 14 of us. It was really impressive. So that was kind of what it was like growing up. At this time, like I said, my parents got married, had me, got divorced. So I am technically an only child, but at any given moment, depending on how you work the pieces of the puzzle, I can be the oldest, youngest, middle, or only child. My stepdad came with 2 daughters from his first marriage, so I have 2 older stepsisters who are 7 and 9 years older than me. My dad and my stepmom went on to have 2 daughters, so I have 2 younger sisters who are 7 and 9 years younger than me. So if you put them all together, I'm in the middle. Technically, I'm an only child, and then, give or take whatever situation it's in, it really depends. And so I grew up mainly living with my mom. My stepdad's kids grew up here in Arizona, actually, not in Prescott, in Phoenix. And so for the most part, I was an only child. My mom's a stereotypical Jewish mother, overbearing, overprotective, loves to eat. Everything can be solved with a bowl of matzo ball soup. And I was her star. She, looking back, I've done a lot of work around my mom, and so I have insight today that I did not have, 6 months ago. But what is clear to me now is that she had her own struggles. She had a very narcissistic mother, and in order to overcompensate for her own feelings of inadequacy, she kind of put all of her sense of self-worth on me. So all of a sudden, it became less about who I was as an individual and more about kind of who I represented, all the things that I could accomplish. It became less about who I was and more about what I did. Because the more that I did, the more that I achieved. And the more I achieved, the more recognition I get. And the more recognition I got meant the more recognition she got. Because really, me getting a good grade in school, yeah, that's cool, but she wants that to go out to dinner with all of her girlfriends to be like, oh, did you hear what my daughter did? Because that's what they did. I want to say that's maybe what Jewish mothers did, but maybe that's just what all mothers did. I don't know. So that was really my mom's house. And so The rules at my mom's were kind of anything goes. Me and my stepdad had a very volatile relationship. The other message I got from my mom was that love equals money. So it was okay for my stepdad to treat my mom and me like absolute crap, to yell at us, to be verbally abusive, to be, completely absent, neglectful, but it was all okay because he paid and because he had a good job and he sent me to private schools and we had the second house in Arizona and we had the nice cars and blah, 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 blah. Like everything was fine because he had money. And so that was it. That was that life. And then 2 or 3 times a year, we would see my older sisters, and all of a sudden, I would get around these, I looked up at them. They were 7 and 9 years older, and they were like goddesses. They're complete opposite of me. They are not Jewish. They're tall. They're blonde. And I was just like, oh my God, you're Barbies. You're these mythical things that I just want to emulate. And so 2 or 3 times a year, I would put on makeup, and I would steal my mom's high-heeled shoes, and I would say inappropriate swear words that I had no idea what they meant, and I would try to be cool and try to be accepted by my older sisters and try to be something that I wasn't. So that was kind of it in my mom's house. And then you go to my dad's house, where my dad is one of my favorite people on the face of the earth, and I love him, and I can also, because of that, say that he is far from perfect. When him and my mom got divorced, I think it was easier for him to become my friend than to be a dad. And so we always had our own relationship. He obviously had my stepmom and then went on to have my 2 younger sisters, and the way that he was a father to them is very different than the way that he was a father to me. We grew up, and our thing was we would go to movies and we would go to dinner, and he would take me to see Austin Powers in movie theaters, which, I was in 2nd grade when that happened, and that's very wildly inappropriate for a 2nd grader. He showed me like The Sixth Sense in theaters, and I have a really bad track record with scary movies. We'll get into that and maybe later. But so yeah, he kind of just I just grew up with him more as a friend. I would go to his house, and I had my own room and things were fine. I was really close with my stepmom before my sisters were born, and then they were born, and I can only imagine what that's like for a mom, to all of a sudden have 2 kids of your own, and it's a different kind of love, and it's a different kind of relationship, and I'm getting older, and all of a sudden I'm a teenager that she didn't ask for, and so on and so on. And so, yeah, that was kind of just the background. I didn't grow up feeling like I didn't belong. I was really close to my parents. Like I said, I went to a really small, close-knit community school, and so I always felt like I belonged, but in order to belong, I felt like to belong meant to fit in. So as long as I fit in with whatever situation I was in, then I would belong. And that meant being somebody different at school, being somebody different with my mom, being somebody different with my dad, being somebody different with different sets of sisters, whatever it was, it meant changing who I was to accommodate the situation in order to fit in. And that is, for me, the root of my addiction. Is this inability to show up authentically as myself, this inability to turn inward to say, hey, this is who I am, this is who Julie is, and I'm going to show up and honor that person. One of the things that, kind of just jumping ahead, that I have discovered in my sobriety is a deep, 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 nerdy, absolutely nerdy love of presidential history, because all I do is read presidential biographies now. And one of my favorite quotes from FDR is, the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. And that was the story of my life, I was just afraid, constantly afraid that people would see the real me, that people would reject me, they would abandon me, they would judge me. And so every single moment was about putting on an act and putting on whatever I needed to do, whatever mask was needed to fit in and to belong. So I got older, 7th grade, for those who are not well-versed in the traditions of Judaism. When you are in 7th grade, you have what's called a bar bat mitzvah, and it's basically like a sweet 16 for Jews. And yeah, you can laugh. It's wildly inappropriate. So basically, imagine the show My Sweet 16 on MTV, but this is for 12-year-olds and 13-year-old Jewish kids. So I had my bat mitzvah And it was basically just like parents trying to outspend each other. So my parents had an ice fountain with my face carved into it that spewed out martinis for all the adults during cocktail hour. It was great. The kids were like banished to like the hotel basement to like play trivia or something. So anyway, I have this bat mitzvah. It's over the top. It's ridiculous. Like I said, my mom and my stepdad have money. My dad, growing up, he struggled financially. And that was always a message I got from my mom was like, your dad doesn't love you as much as we do because he can't pay for school supplies, or he can't buy you new clothes, or, you know, whatever it was. Like, why doesn't your dad love you as much as he loves his other daughters? Because he pays everything for them, and yet he splits the cost with me. And that, I'm, you know, simplifying it and making it a lot more overt than it was when I was a kid, but that was the message I got. And so after 7th grade, when my dad refused to pay for the ice sculpture with my face carved into it, they went to court. Long story long, it ended in battles, custody battles. I ended up having to testify as to which parent I wanted to live with. My dad ended up taking a break. He said, I can't handle this. It's too emotionally straining. You know, I need to take some time from seeing you. So I didn't see my dad for 6 months. You know, and at this exact same time, I found out from my best friend that the reason my parents got divorced was because my dad had an affair with my stepmom. I left that small, tiny Jewish day school and went to a new high school that, if anybody has seen Gossip Girl, is very similar to that, minus the uniforms and New York City. But, and all of a sudden, it was kind of like everything that I thought I had defined myself on. These people, you know, that I had changed myself to fit in with, this family that I had evolved myself to be part of, everything disappeared. And so I get to high school, and I have no idea who I am. These people don't know me. They don't really want to know me. They are beautiful and skinny and wealthy, and that's the other thing, and I have so much sadness for myself because I grew up blessed, you know, so blessed in the things that I got to have, and I felt poor. Like, in the community that I grew up in, there was such amount of exuberant wealth that I literally felt like my family was wanting, that I constantly lived from this place of like, oh, poor me. Like, we don't have a private plane. And, like, it sounds so ridiculous now, but I literally felt like God was doing something against me. Because why would I be here surrounded by all of this wealth just to, you know, not have it myself? And so this is how I entered high school. And I went to private high school, college prep. You know, from the first day you get there, it's like Harvard, Yale, Stanford, Princeton, Penn. Those are the schools that you're focusing on getting into. And if you can't get into one of those, then you better get into the best Big Ten school there is. And so I get there, and this is honestly when it all kind of started for me. I didn't turn to drugs or alcohol first. I turned to food. And I used food as a way to escape, as a way to numb out, as a way to stop feeling basically the same thing that I do with alcohol or drugs. You know, to me, it's the same. I call it, so bad because I love the character in the movie, but I call it like Dobby from Harry Potter, of like, you know, Dobby just like always appears wherever you go, and it's like, that's my addiction. It can appear as like alcohol or cocaine or food or work or a man, whatever it is, but it's always there to serve the same purpose, and it's always there to numb me out from my feelings, to make me feel confident in myself, to quiet the voice inside my head that tells me that I am never good enough. And so there it was. It came up as food. I grew up with food being just like a really, I'm going to check time. Okay. Big thing. Again, I attribute that to Judaism, but who knows? But like, we did everything. Everything surrounded food. If somebody died, you ate. If someone got married, you ate. If it was a birthday, you ate. A holiday, whatever it was, everything centered around food. And so when I kind of had this like crisis of self and didn't know who I was and didn't I didn't know who to show up as anymore because I didn't know the people and I didn't know the situation. I turned to food. And so I ate and I ate and I ate everything that I could get my hands on. And it was an attempt to hide myself. It's like this, it doesn't make sense, but like the bigger I get, the more invisible I'll become. And so I did that for a while. And I found this, group of girlfriends who, they loved me, they accepted me. They weren't popular, they weren't cool, we didn't get talked to by the guys. We were sophomores in high school, still having slumber parties and renting movies from Blockbuster, because that was still a thing. I remember the depression. I remember skipping weeks on weeks of school and sitting in the basement in my pajamas, like scrapbooking. Just like scrapbooking every single memory from my grade school, from that Jewish day school, from the time that I was happy. And my parents didn't know what to do. I was in therapy and they just didn't know. And so fast forward, going into junior year, my eating disorder takes a lovely 180 pivot and very quickly turns into, instead of eating everything, I'm going to eat nothing. And very quickly turned into extreme anorexia. I lost a large amount of weight in a very scary short period of time. When my parents caught on to that, my friend, great friend that she was, taught me the secret tricks of how to make yourself throw up. And so I was bulimic for 10 years. It's a really long time. It started off, just the occasional, I'll throw up when I feel full, or, let's go buy a cake from the store and eat it just because we know we can throw up. But when I got to college, that very quickly turned into, I'm going to throw up everything I ate, to the point that before I got sober, so last May, I was throwing up probably like 20 times a day. I would have a bite of an apple, and I'd be like, can't keep this down. This is going to make me get fat. And I talk about it because, for me, if I go back to my eating disorder, that's going back to alcohol. That's going back to drugs. It's different, 100%, and it's not, like, sobriety and recovery doesn't look the same, but I'm using it in the same purpose. It's the same demon. And so I lose all this weight, great, go me, no surprise, all of a sudden guys are talking to me, the popular girls are inviting me out, and so I go out and I start getting this male attention, male validation. That's my favorite word in the entire world, validation. That is what I am seeking in everything that I do, to quiet this voice that I am not good enough. Everything that I do is seeking external validation. And so here all of a sudden I have, this addiction, my eating disorder, that makes me skinny and is getting people to compliment me and pay attention to me. Cool. Then I go out and I have this substance, this alcohol, that is making me more confident and is making people respond to me and have more fun, and it's all getting me this validation. And look, here are drugs. They're making me really good at school, and my parents are really proud of me, and I'm getting good grades, and I'm getting the good scores on the tests. And all of a sudden, my life became a constant quest for that validation in any form, whatever it was. And from that point on, my addiction just took a life of its own. I graduated high school. I went to University of Michigan. Like I said, if you don't go to one of those schools, you go to a good Big Ten school. I graduated college. I have my degree in marketing and communications. I did it. I did it all the way that I was supposed to. I was taught from a very young age, here's what you do to be successful and to be happy. You go to a good college. You graduate said college. You get a good job. You meet a Jewish man, preferably a Jewish doctor or a lawyer. You marry that man, have lots of babies, and then retire to South Florida. That's the plan. That's like, if you do this, you will be wealthy and you will be happy and no questions asked. And so I did it. I moved back to Chicago after college and got a job, got my dream job, found the Jewish man. He was not a doctor or a lawyer. He was not even a good man. Really, the only thing going for him was that he was Jewish. But I thought in my head, this is what I've been told my entire life. And it was like every step that I took towards getting that validation from all these people, the validation that I've wanted my entire life of, we're so proud of you, you're doing it right, good job, blah, blah, blah. I was getting it. It was there. And I have never felt more miserable. It was like every step that I took, every additional piece of validation I got, the more miserable I got. In college, I was introduced to drugs. I love cocaine and ecstasy and anything that's going to keep me up and talking. Shocking for those who know me. And it was really easy to justify the drinking and the drugging and all of it in college. Play hard, work hard. It's what everyone did. Thirsty Thursdays, I don't remember, but every day of the week had a different drinking name to it. Taco Tuesday, wine Wednesdays, whatever. And it was easy to justify it, and it was easy to say, okay, no one can give me a hard time. I'm getting good grades. I'm doing what I need to do. How can you sit here and tell me that I party too hard? So then I graduate college, and then I get the job, and then it's like, what do responsible adults do after a long day of work? They drink wine. Even if it is out of a really shitty box from the grocery store. They drink wine after work. So I started drinking wine after work, and it quickly turned into this hell of I would wake up every day, I would drink 4 o'clock in the morning, I would go to work, I would work for 9 hours, 10 hours, I would be happy at work because work was my only sense of purpose and happiness. I didn't have anything else in my life except work. So I would go to work and I would feel successful and I would feel validated, and then I would leave work, and it was like the second I left that building, something physiological in my body changed, and that the only way I can describe it is like I stepped out of the building and my body started withdrawing. Like all of a sudden I was shaky and I was sweaty and I was dizzy and I couldn't stand and I needed it. Like I had to run across the street to just chug a glass of wine before getting on the bus to go home. And this went on. This went on for 3 years. And like I said, I was in a relationship and I was secretly drinking behind his back. I was stealing his medication. I was doing whatever I needed to maintain this facade of here I am, I live in the great downtown Chicago apartment, I have the great job, I have the great boyfriend, blah, 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 look at me, admire me, and whatever I have to do to maintain that, I'll do it, even if it means killing myself. So when I was about 25 is when I started attempting to get sober. My parents, this pattern would happen where we would have a family function, I would get really drunk and explode, and my parents would be like, okay, that's it. We're at a crisis, you need to go to treatment. And me being the really brilliant alcoholic I am would be like, you're right, I need help. But I need help for my eating disorder. My alcoholism is fine. It's a byproduct of my eating disorder. If we get my eating disorder under control, then everything will be fine. So I spent 2 years going in and out of eating disorder treatment centers. Didn't really get any sort of abstinence from it. It was the typical story. You go in, you're there for 2 weeks, insurance decides to cut you, you're on your own. And so, I did that for a while. And relapse, too, is a really big part of my story. It was, God, I don't even know, I guess winter, the beginning of 2016, I remember going to my first AA meeting. I went to treatment that summer. I came back. I had the longest I'd ever had of sobriety, which was 3.5 months. I found happiness. And, when I look back on it, it's funny because now today I know what the definition of insanity is. Back then I didn't. But I had it in my head. I was like, okay, if I remove the alcohol, alcohol is the problem. If I remove the alcohol, then I can go back to my normal life and be happy. because all of that is supposed to make me happy. So if I remove the one thing that's causing me the unhappiness, then I'll be good. And so I remove the alcohol, and I go back to the job, and I go back to the guy, and I go back to the apartment, and I don't understand why I'm miserable. And it's only a matter of time before I'm drinking again. And this happens and happens over and over again, of me not understanding why I can't just live this life that I've built happily. I just read recently that, in order to live the life we're meant to live, we have to tear down the life that we've built. And that's never been so true for me. For 3 years, maybe 2 years, I was in and out of treatment centers. I would take leave of absence from my job, so my job would pay me while I was in treatment, so I was still making all of my money. I had zero consequences for any of it. And it was like, cool, this is like a 2-month vacay from work. I'm going to read, I'm going to tan, I'm going to flirt with some treatment boys, and we're going to call it a day. Then in the summer of 2017, I came out to Prescott. I went to a treatment center here, Royal. Was there for 3 months, and I met a guy, and we fell in love, treatment romance. And after a month and a half of dating, because we knew each other so well, we decided to move to Denver together. Moved to Denver. I got a job there, so I was like, this is God. God wants this to happen. So we moved, and within like 3 hours of landing at the airport, we were both drinking. We spent the year in a year-long relapse. He was a heroin addict, and we just spent the year in a year-long relapse. He became abusive. I became miserable. I starved myself. When I got sober, I was probably maybe 20 pounds lighter than I am now. I had stopped growing hair, had lost the hair all over my body, had bruises, was covered in bruises. And it was, at one point he proposed, 6 months in, and I said yes, because I was like, this is going to solve our problems. If I have the ring on my finger and we have a wedding to plan, we're going to get sober and we're going to be happy. And I remember fighting with my dad about my wedding budget, because that's what mattered. So anyway, I woke up one day in June. I have no rhyme or reason why, except to say that that's God, that's my higher power. And I woke up one day and I was done. I detoxed myself. He was actually having a party, so I had locked myself in our room for 4 days to detox while him and his friends partied in our living room. Checking time, cool. Reached out to my therapist from Prescott that summer, and was basically just like, here's what happened, here's the mess that I am, help me. And she was like, I'm at this treatment center, it's a different one, it's all women, it's more intense, blah, 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 come. And I was like, done. I trust you, what I'm doing's not working, I need to get out, I'm in. So I leave. I pack up our apartment, somehow stay sober for 2 weeks, and come to this treatment center. And have been at this treatment center for the past 13 months. I am graduating next week, which is very exciting. Thank you. Long time coming. This year, first off, I didn't think I would ever be able to get a year. When I say I have a year, I don't just have a year from alcohol. I have 10 months from, recovery from throwing up. I have 10 months of eating 3 meals a day. I have it's 10 months, a year of actual recovery. And what that is today is that's freedom and that's happiness. And 2 months in, I was doing work around the guy and realized how abusive it was and how much I needed to leave him, and was in the process of writing. I wrote him this really long goodbye letter, and it was this really angry letter. And we went on an outdoor adventure. I've never actually talked about this part when sharing, but so we had an outdoor adventure, and like, whatever. We went up to Flagstaff and we went hiking in this forest that had all these aspens, and aspens were always his trees. And I was walking by myself, and I just, like, talked to him, and I was just like, hey, like, I'm done. Like, I can't do this anymore. I don't know where you are. I don't know what you're doing. I don't know how you are, but, like, I like, can't keep loving you, because as long as I kept any sort of tie to him, I would go back to him. I would go back to the drugs and to the alcohol and to the me that thought that that's what I deserved. You know, it wasn't even so much about him as much as it was me settling for someone who could treat me like such utter crap. And in those woods, I said goodbye. I said goodbye, yes, to him, but to the me that was going to put up with it. And I remember leaving, and I wasn't one for, like, you know, nature and spirituality and all of that. But I came back, and I was like, oh, that was weird. Like, I felt like he was there. Like, he heard me. The next day, the people at my treatment center called me into a room and told me that he died from a heroin overdose. That was almost a year ago. Yeah, it'll be a year in a few weeks. And I always was one of those people that was like, oh, if the worst thing happens, if somebody close to me dies or XYZ, like, that's it, I won't stay sober. You know, like, I can't handle it. And it happened. And my treatment center did not let me go to the funeral. I was not allowed to talk to his parents. I don't know. Something changed in me. Something changed in me in those woods when I said goodbye to the me that was going to put up with that. And then something changed when he died, because, I don't know, all of a sudden it was like, I believe that people come into our lives for a reason. God, that's a Wicked song. I can't believe I just quoted Wicked. And, yeah. So, they come into our lives for a reason. And I believe that he came in to save my life, that with his death, he was allowing me, he was basically saying, you know, go live your life, go be free of all of it, and go start over. And so, from that day on, I promised myself that I was going to honor the man that I fell in love with, the man that I know he had the potential to be. Every day that I stayed sober was not just going to be for me, but also going to be for him. And every day since then, it has not been easy, and it has been a struggle, and there have been times where I have fought it, and I have hated it, but I wake up and I go to sleep every night knowing that I am enough, and that I am loved, and that no matter what happens, I'm never alone because I have myself. And to quote another Roosevelt who I love, you know, no one can make me feel inferior without my consent. And nothing has ever been so true. So that's all I got. Thanks for letting me share.